1, 2, 3, 4.
We're live from New York!
It's Friday night.
There was a show called Fridays that tried to compete with SNL.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
But was it based on?
It was the only notoriety. Well, it has like three different things it's notorious for. One was Andy Kaufman like causing a shit on one episode, and the other one was where Kramer got his start, and the other one is where Larry David got his start.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that the one where Andy Kaufman is throwing water at people?
Yes. Well, I'm Gary. I'm also a mutant astronaut. I'm pretty much every other thing I'm on. I'm writing a show called Failing Upward right now. The pilot's on YouTube if you want to see it. I do the Troma Animation Film Festival, and me and Ahmad are working on a comic right now, as well as a couple other projects. And yeah, that's about it.
That was Gary. I'll be linking to all that stuff in the description.
Cool.
Down below. So last time we talked about Rocco, and that's a very good show.
It is.
So we want to do another show. Came out a couple years after Rocco ended, and it's very in that kind of it's in that vein of like '90s animated sitcoms of sorts.
Yeah, it's very weird because as I was watching it, I kind of got the feeling that like it was a good follow up to Rocco. Because it is, in a weird way, it is kind of a similar show. It's about working in the 90s.
I would say it's more than just a weird way. I mean, they're actually deceptively similar if you take a look at what they're about and how they handle the subject matter and the characters. Because it's like...
Yeah, even some of the humor is similar.
Yeah. The entire premise is basically the same, if you really think about it. Person, going out into the world, living on their own... kind of dealing with that, the post-college years. There was more exploration of the characters in Mission Hill, of course, than you're going to see in anything that's like Rocco, which is just, more, I guess, situation-driven than character-driven. There's also a very loose continuity in Mission Hill.
Mission Hill came out on the WB in September 24th, 1999, and was done by, Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein of Simpsons fame.
Yep.
But wait, is it Weinstein or Weinstein?
A lot of the art...
Oh no! We're living the Weinstein universe.
I see. We've shifted over at some point. A lot of the art was done by Lauren McMillan, who also worked in The Simpsons and a lot of other shows. Her stuff's really cool. So, Mission Hill it did not last very long. It was supposed to have 18 episodes originally, but only 13 were made, and it was eventually canceled due to poor ratings. But it found cult status through Adult Swim and a lot of other late night blocks, such as one on TBS. What was the one on TBS called? It was Too Funny to Sleep.
Oh, that's right. Oh my god. Holy shit, I forgot about that.
I don't think I have that anymore. That's been gone. Just as far as I remember. I haven't watched TBS in a while.
Oh man, there's a bumper for that actually in some of the uploads of the show. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
Oh shit.
Oh, are you thinking about the Teletoon one it's on?
Yeah, Teletoon Unleashed or something.
Teletoon After Dark.
After Dark.
I thought it was Unleashed.
Oh, Unleashed, you're right, it's Unleashed.
Lunatics Unleashed.
Oh god.
It's not
if I remember right, the Mission Hill was going to be called the Downtowners originally, but MTV had a show called Downtown, I think. Yeah. It was just called Downtown, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they had to change their name.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm trying to think what's going to go with that. I think it ended up with the better name, to be honest, because you remember Mission Hill. I love Downtown, but it's a kind of generic name.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of just it's about the city, where Mission Hill is here's a place. There's a very specific place.
Yeah, and that's a very important part that we'll get into, because it is a really definitive place. It's a definitive universe, which is really interesting for an animated show.
Definitely.
Yeah. Where are we starting?
So I guess we'll just talk about our experiences with the show.
Sure.
Gary, you're new, so you can go first.
Well, okay, so Mission Hill came out in 99. I was, I think, 10 and I saw one episode on the WB, and I forgot about it because went way over my head when I was.
I'm sure that was the case for a lot of people.
Yeah, it went way over my head when I was 10, and then years later, it was on Adult Swim, and it became like it was an addiction. Like, me and my friends had to watch that show every night it was on Adult Swim, and it resonated weirdly because it's not necessarily a show I could relate to at the time because I was only like 14, 15 when I saw it again, and It wasn't like I was living in the city, but in a weird way, the characters are kind of still emotionally immature. So like they were still clearly trying to be younger than they actually were. So in that weird way, I feel like it related to teens more than it would to actual 20-somethings. There are things in the show that relate to actual 20-somethings, like especially mid-season, because that's when it starts getting like really fucking crazy. But it was just like, I don't know, the art style was like nothing that was on TV at the time. Like and I don't think anything since has done that kind of indie comic style, which if you listen to the commentary on the DVDs, like the biggest inspirations they had were like Peter Baig's Hate, which is a comic, and then another comic called 8-Ball. But I'll say like a little bit of Evan Dorkin in there as well. I don't know, like it's just it's such a slice of life show, and really I feel like if I pitched you the plot to Mission Hill, it's about like two brothers living with all these crazy people in Mission, like in this apartment. Like it just sounds kind of generic. It sounds like a sitcom. But the way it's done was so weird and different and offbeat that it really works, and it really is something special that I feel like people missed out on.
All right. Failmore, what about you?
Well, I was going to say, Gary brings up a good point, because the characters are written in such a way that even if you're not in their exact situation, you can relate to them, and they're very much written like real people, you know? The way that they play off of each other is realistic to, you know, not only those characters, but just as how people would kind of operate, if that makes any sense. And the whole idea that there's sort of this arrested development going on with these characters, and they're in the process of growing up, kind of coming into this delayed adulthood, so to speak, and figuring themselves out. That's sort of a universal. I never saw the show when it was on the WB. I only saw it through Adult Swim. And at first, I didn't follow it too closely because I'm just like, the show's okay, but, you know, it wasn't what I was there for. But as time went on, I found myself watching it a little bit more closely. I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty clever. And like Gary said, there's nothing else quite like it at the time, and really nothing like it ever since then. And when Ahmad and I were talking about this before, I think the closest thing that I could think of stylistically, especially in the way that backgrounds are done, to how this show was animated would be like the fucking intro to Bewitched. You know, the animated part that's like, it's got the, you know, the city in the backdrop and stuff like that, the way that that's drawn. It's got a very interesting style, and you mentioned, you know, there are specific indie comic references and stuff like that. I wasn't aware of that myself because I didn't really do my homework, but when I was looking at it, I'm like, what does this remind me of? I think Ahmad just mentioned, actually, UPA, and then, you know, a lot of these older, you know, 1950s or 1960s era cartoons and stuff like that, but with more of like a 1980s sort of color sensibility. It's just very interesting the way it's all put together. If I had to think of a word to describe it as, I know it's probably going to sound stupid because it's probably wrong, kind of a rockabilly look.
For me, I'm much younger than you guys, so I didn't see it. I didn't see it when it was on WB. I saw one little bit of it on Adult Swim when I was like 7. I caught it by like, this is when Adult Swim was like new, and I caught it by like by staying up too late, and I was like, what's this? And the very first thing I ever saw that show was penis, 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 and that was it.
Yeah. That
and I never saw anything about that show since. So then it just kind of faded from my memory until like a few years ago, a mutual friend of ours brought it up. He brought up that scene, and I was like, oh yeah, that was a show, wasn't it? So I went back and watched some of it. I was like, oh, this show's really cool. And then I saw this. I was 18 when I first saw it, like fully. And that's probably like the perfect age to see it too, I would say, because that's like starting college. And so it's kind of just like seeing the way these characters interplay with each other, and the way like the design that comes together. Because it's, as Phil mentioned, it's very like UPA style, especially mainly just the backgrounds. And some companies are doing it at the time. You could say like Private Girls kind of doing that, or like Dexter's Lab was kind of doing that. But like I think Mission Hill probably did the best of any of them. It's such a weird and like unique looking show. And the way I basically describe it is that it's essentially it's an animated comic book. In a way, I feel like when people say that usually implies like a bad thing, but I think it's probably the best, like most well done example of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like it's very like it's not just animation. It's very graphic. It's very certain kind of staging, certain kind of character design, certain kind of like shots. It all comes together really nicely, and it's rare to see a show that's like matches that level of like intent and like craft. And I think that's why it's very understated too. It's why I enjoy it a lot.
It's animation.
It's animation.
Nobody's gonna get that joke.
It's no Bebe's Kids, but
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think it's deceptively complex, actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crazy shading going on in that show.
The use of black.
Yeah, and the use of blue too. Like it's crazy. I like how like when Andy and Andy's like I'm forgetting characters' names already. Andy and Kevin.
No.
When Andy and Kevin are in are in a dark area, their hair turns black.
Yeah,
it's really weird and really cool. And like can you think of any other show that does that? I no, it's the color scheme is totally like its own. Oh, you know what it reminds me a lot of? Do you know that comic Ghost World? It reminds me a lot of that too. But I think that might have been black and white, so I'm totally like biting my tongue on that.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's very distinctly as neon as Mission Hill is. It's also very much black and white design. Where it's like I remember in particular like it's not season 4, episode 4, the Kevin versus SATs.
Yeah.
There's that great bit where they're in the. He's trying to make all the computers crack the codes of the SAT, and everything's all black and green, and that's such like it's so like comic bookish, where it's just like there's really like spot blacks everywhere, and it's just kind of like a faint indication of a background, but you still know what's going on. And it's like very like stylish, and it's like these or like the part you're talking about where the first episode in the nightclub, and like everything's kind of black in the background, and their hair turns black and stuff like that. It's color that doesn't make sense, but that's fine because it's color that's used effectively. And that's not just color; it's black and white.
Yeah,
that's
I was watching that, and I'm like, the first thing that popped in my head, I'm like, this is why they didn't get a second season because they spent too much money on this fucking show. but like it's okay. So that's the whole thing. Is that like if this show came out today, it would be animated in Flash. It would be from Canada. It would, and it just wouldn't. Yeah, I feel like I'm going too hard on Canada here.
They deserve it.
And it's just like you will never get effort in a primetime animated show like this, and I feel like the show needs a little more notoriety because it's, for my money, it's like the most beautifully animated primetime show ever. Like like at least an animated sitcom. The Simpsons is amazing, but like nobody's ever gonna, with the exception of like a few gags, I don't think anyone ever really marveled at the animation of The Simpsons. But like this isn't like, I wouldn't say it's mind-blowing, but for like a primetime TV show, I'm just like, wow, like a lot of effort was put into the stylization of this.
It's a lot more interesting than anything like what you're describing any primetime animated show has any right to be. And that's not just in terms of how it's written or the subject matter, but how it's drawn. And just a very unique set of artistic rules and ideas that were put to use in the show and work brilliantly. And it accentuates the kind of attitude of the show as well.
Yeah. It like, when I was watching it when I was younger, like, watching each episode was like, oh man, what kind of cool, weird, like, not gimmicks, but little animation tricks are they going to do in this? And, like, there are, like, so many little moments that, like, just flashed back to me when I was watching it. Because I have the DVD, but I haven't watched the series full through in, like, a long time. And the ones that really stuck out, I think it's in the, what is it? It's the one where, like, everybody's, like, it's, like, the worst day ever for Andy when he's trying to get to the Grammys. And
It's Stories of Hope.
Stories of Hope and Forgiveness. That's right. When Kevin's like, "Have you been smoking?" and like Andy just glares daggers at him, but it's like literal daggers, and it's like, what other show would do that? That's like crazy.
Yeah,
I can only think of one.
Maybe some. Yeah.
I can only think of one, and it's Rocky and Bullwinkle, so it's not even new.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And maybe something like Nick always talks about like J.J. Villard and stuff like that, like, you know, and King Star King, and I feel like they might have done that, but like...
Well, that's pulling from that comic book graphic, like, style of sense. Like, you're getting at that. It's like, one thing they'll do things in Mission Over, it's like, when the characters will have little sweat drops falling off of them, or like, when they stare at something, they'll do a little...
That's great.
And but that's so like graphically designed. And like not very many shows do that, because not many shows would even dare to do that.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up the stare thing, because it's usually always that somebody is like, it's usually always somebody staring at somebody else for like sexual reasons.
Yeah.
Like the first time it happens, he's staring at Gwen's ass, and I feel like any other show would just like, it would just be like something really dumb, like she bends over and it like plays some kind of stupid musical sting, but like it's interesting, like. They didn't reinvent it, because it's obviously been done in indie comics, but, like, they put it in the animated format, and it works really well. It works better than I think they probably had anticipated. And it's weird that they almost, I don't want to say they give it an innocence, but it's just like, oh, it's like, it's stupid. Like, it's just, it makes it stupid, so it makes it kind of innocent at the same time.
It's a paradoxical subtlety. It's paradoxically subtle. It calls attention to what they're doing, but the way in which they call attention to it sort of underscores how innocuous what they're doing is.
Yeah, and I think what was I gonna say? I think it's like I said, in any other show, it would be like a stupid musical sting, and it would make it much more like exploitive than what it actually was.
Yeah, they would have like a whole shot set up for it and everything.
And it's interesting because, like, in later episodes, when you get to know Andy and Gwen's relationship, it completely makes sense. Like, did you actually end up watching the animatic?
Yeah, I did. I watched the whole thing. We'll get into it.
Yeah, that's the most tragic part of the show.
Actually, I'll bring up one thing about the animatic. The storyboards for that show and the show itself are like 1-to-1. It's like, it's so like everything they do is just, I mean, that I would hope it was, but it's like, it's so like locked down, the storyboards, and it's just like a direct translation.
I'll go on one more on that. I love when it's when they first get to the nightclub and Gwen is dancing and her hands were like, mind you, this was years before Adventure Time. Her arms were like flailing like noodles. Like, so I mean, obviously that's, if you go back to like Terry Toons and stuff like that, that's in there, but
yeah, that's like a rubber hose, you know.
And a mainstream animated show, like years before Adventure Time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, it's done for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's like, you know, we're going to do the Kermit the Frog arm thing, but we're doing it for a reason and not because we don't feel like drawing elbows.
So, one thing I really like about like how physical comedy is handled is that the show is mostly pretty low-key, the way the characters move and stuff, but then sometimes it's like, especially when it's Andy and Kevin, they're like, I'm gonna hit you, and they start fucking, everything goes Mach speed, and they start flipping each other, and like, all their arm moves are everywhere, there's like a million smear frames.
I have that written down in my notes as top 10 anime fights. And, yeah, it's, like I said, like, it could have literally just been them, like, slapping each other on the head, like, a couple times, but they turn it into, like, this dust cloud, and it's just, everything this show does goes like a little bit beyond what they had to do, and maybe it was. I think it's like I said. I think it was both to the show's advantage and to its detriment that they did that, because it made production really expensive, and you know, when we get into why this was canceled, you know, like you could start to see.
I was gonna say that the fact that they do take it a little further than they had to, especially with those Andy and Kevin kind of beating up on each other. What was funny to me is that it underscored how childish they were acting, making that just a bit more cartoonish than it would have been if it was literally anybody else. It was just, you know, we're gonna make this really goofy and make it kind of an almost Hanna-Barbera fight, you know, where it's just a cloud of dust and fists flying everywhere, just to show like how stupid they're being.
It's not taken to like an extreme like something like Family Guy would do. You know, the Family Guy always has like the chicken fight, and it's like that's that's too much. That's like too much. Where it's like it's not even about the point or the joke anymore. It's just kind of we're having this thing to have this whole sequence because we got to fill time. It's like that. That's not how you do that. I like seeing how the stuff in that show progresses because I like that in any first season of a show. You're seeing how they're figuring stuff out, and you can see that in that show a lot. Like the biggest thing they use a lot is like smears, but not like right away they didn't really use very many smears, but like over time it's like to underscore certain actions, they'll just use them and they'll use these really quick motions for certain things. And it's not something you really notice right away, but when you go back and like look at earlier episodes of the show, it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. You're seeing them like kind of figure out how like to pose out these characters and move them around and stuff, and it's like it's really apparent in those little dumb little fight scenes, but it's also just like in like little things throughout the show.
It's just really well. I don't think I have anything else to say. I just think it's insanely well animated for a primetime animated sitcom, and
it's not even that much animation. It's just like, but that's why the graphic style helps. Is that it's like the shots are like locked off in certain ways and posed where it's like there's always something kind of interesting to look at. It's always like diagonals and colors that kind of frame things and block things out. And that's what I kind of miss in shows, or it's like the blocking of things. People think that having a nice background means you've got a shot, and it's like, no, that's not what that means at all. You have to consider like how things are like blocked out. Like Fairmore and I talked about this like, a while ago. We were saying that like there's you look at like you look at like Kevin's room or like any other shot in the series, especially if it's nighttime. They'll have like a black environment and just like an indication of where it is, and you know what environment they are because they give you just enough, but it's just enough that it doesn't get in the way of the characters either. It's like they're not fighting the background. The characters aren't like fighting for attention, which is important. And I feel like a lot of shows get that wrong nowadays.
All of the backgrounds in this show are like their own unique animal. And I feel like, hang on, let me see. Failmore, you could say something while I get this in my notes. Bring it up for a second.
What's interesting is that it's not like they only did sparse backgrounds or only did complex backgrounds and transitions. There are a lot of really, really good and really complicated backgrounds used in shots where there are characters, but the thing is, they don't just clutter the frame with shit. They know when to tone it down, and when they tone it down, they're giving you just enough that you know what's going on, and it's usually one after the other. You have, here's our complicated background where we're introducing things, or the transition, then you go into the less detailed one, and you go between those, usually. I'm trying to think of, probably the best example would that be scenes in the diner, or any scene involving the hallway that leads to the elevator, where they usually run into some of their neighbors from the apartment.
School.
Yeah, the school's another good example of that. There's a lot of that going on, where you go from like, okay, complex background with characters in it that is not a transition, to the more sparse stuff. And in other shows, that may well have been just a void. It's like, let's go to the less detailed shot, where you have the character's center frame. And there's like nothing. And something that comes to mind with that would be like early Simpsons, where it's like, okay, here's just a gradient. There's a character. There might be like a line or something for a floor.
I might have to go back on that thing I said about the exploitive thing, but I'm not gonna say it contradicts it, because it's just dumb. It's done as this really dumb thing. But I mentioned the thing about Andy looking at Gwen, but there's another part where Kevin looks at Eunice, Weirdy, and it does that dumb like musical spike, but it's done in it's oddly like it works in that sense better. I don't know why it's
well, because it's played more like
she's not supposed to be necessarily attractive. She's not supposed to be
it's more ironic.
Yeah.
Whereas like that Andy finds Gwen attractive, so they just underplay the moment. That's why it's just a little dotted line instead. It's not like a whole shot.
Yeah,
it's like a whole like transition or anything like that. I think that's why it
Didn't
works.
they do the dotted line thing with when they had the mistyping of Posey's ad for a massage parlor, and there's like the perverted guy
they
in
did,
there.
yeah.
They did the dotted line for that too.
Yeah.
Yep. They do it for very certain things.
I like
it's not done too
my
much.
favorite one is the one. It's not the same effect, but it's the lines coming out of the coffee. It's really cool.
They do that for certain things. That's the thing. They don't do it too much either, where it feels like it's like I've seen shows where it's like they put like conflict sound effects in the show like proper and they'll write it out, and I don't. That can be okay sometimes, but if you overdo it, it starts to feel a little weird.
It gets boring.
Yeah, exactly. You just get used to it, and it's like, it's not interesting anymore. They do it just in Mission Hill. They're doing it just for very certain things, and I like that. It's like just for very certain moments, or to underscore something, or just for like a joke.
Guys, I'll be right back. Just give me 2 minutes.
That's fine.
All right.
It's just to like underscore certain things. I think that's an important thing to note.
Well, it's, them not doing it constantly. Like you guys were saying, they did a different thing in another scene. That's fine. That makes, when they use it, seem more clever, because there's actually intent. I'm trying to think of a good example of one of those kinds of gimmicks being overused in a more contemporary show, and something that came to mind, do you remember Pickle and Peanut?
Yeah, it's still airing, I think.
Unfortunately. Yeah. There's a thing that they do, and I saw this in the 2 or 3 episodes that I saw, it happened in each one, where they're calling attention to something, and, it's brought into the center of the frame. There's, like, words that float around, whatever it is they're showing off. It's this weird emphasis thing that they do.
Yeah, or like they do that in New Powerpuff Girls too, where it's like there's a particular moment where it's like curse broken. A character gets like a curse broken, and they put it up on the screen like the transition happens. There's like words everywhere. It's like, really, do we need that?
Yeah, it's like they're putting up a reaction image or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's graphic design, but not really. It's graphic design in a cartoon, but not understanding like what that means or using it effectively.
If you do it more than once, especially within one episode, it's just like, why?
Mission Hill just knows the right amount of things. That's the thing about Mission Hill that really works, is that it's very, very just understated. It's like we're doing just the simplest amount of things to get our point across, and that's what's important.
Well, that's another thing that I would like to get to also, because the understatedness extends much further than the art.
Yeah, as that's what the transition to. Let's talk about the characters.
All right,
Gary will be here in a second, I'm sure. Welcome back.
Okay, so what were you talking about?
So, Failmore, what's your favorite character in Mission Hill?
My favorite character in Mission Hill.
Or characters, if you don't have one.
Stogie's my favorite character.
I am a perfect gentleman.
Yes, I can tell by your inner light that you're a good person. But Stogie, there are dark forces at work within him.
No,
Stogie's pretty good.
Stogie's everybody's favorite character.
To be honest, I would not, I would not be hard on anybody for actually saying that and being totally serious. It's a hard show to pick a favorite from, because the main characters, the main 4 that live in the apartment, they're all great, but they also form kind of a unit, there's an aggregate character in their chemistry.
Yeah, essentially.
So it's a little bit difficult to actually pick out a favorite.
That's what it helps that they're all so well realized. It's kind of like they're all kind of great in their little way.
Yeah, they're unique. It's not to say that they're all interchangeable. That's not the case at all. But rather that
you're saying that they're an ensemble. Yeah.
Yeah, their interplay makes them what they are. And if you took them away and you put them out on their own and individually, it might work, but it wouldn't work nearly as well.
Exactly.
So I would just say, like, the main 4, they're my favorite characters. And that's great, because they're the characters we spend the most time with.
Do you have a favorite, Ahmad?
I really like Gus and Wally.
Yeah.
Really funny. I like the first time you see them and they're just like screaming at each other, and then they start making out. And
Fighting. What are you looking at?
like, that's why I knew I like these characters.
Thing to note, that is the first gay kiss on TV.
You're shitting.
Really?
That is the first.
No,
that's
come
the
on,
first
that's
gay
not
kiss
true.
on TV.
Are you serious?
I'm
That is-
gonna fact check myself, but I'm almost certain.
In fact, yeah, please, because we're like assholes if you're wrong.
Is it the first overall or the first animated gay kiss?
Yeah, it may be animated, but like not like it can't be like the very first.
The very this is funny. It said it's between Dawson's Creek and Mission Hill, and nobody can really.
Wow.
When did Dawson's Creek come out?
Yeah, it's Dawson. Okay, the first man-on-man kiss in live-action television is Dawson's Creek, and that aired in 2000. The Mission Hill pilot aired in 1999.
Oh my god! Whoa.
I was gonna say, like, I know that there's been a lesbian kiss way before that, and
Yeah.
apparently.
There is an exception.
91?
There is an exception.
What?
Let me see. They're saying that The Simpsons technically had a male-on-male kiss, but it wasn't like they weren't in a relationship. It was character comes up and kisses Homer, and but that doesn't count.
Yes, if you're gonna count that, you can say all the Looney Tunes cartoons where like Bugs kisses people.
Yeah.
It's really unclear. It's really unclear.
You know what? We'll
That's hilarious.
we'll still say that their relationship is very progressive.
Yeah, and
that's the thing about, not to get preachy, but it's like that's the thing about people have to realize is that they're gay, but it's not important. It just happens.
Yeah.
It's just a thing that's there.
There's a lot of jokes.
And, like, I feel like
there's jokes, not jokes, but there's just like there's a lot of mention of them being gay, but it's not integral
like
to their character. It's just that they're gay.
Exactly.
Well, there are jokes, but it's not. You never really feel like it's all that much at their expense. They're not making fun of them for being gay.
It's very playful.
If anything,
Yeah.
they're the most well adjusted of the entire fucking apartment.
Probably.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Or maybe besides the episode where Gus is a knife. That one's really good.
Not taking it out.
Stop fussing over me.
Okay, I wanted to bring that moment up because I don't know why this moment made me laugh so hard. I rewound it like 3 times, but it's when Gus is in the diner and the kid starts crying when she sees the knife in his head, and then he takes some guy's like fucking Abe Lincoln cap and puts it on, and the little girl goes, "Look, mommy, the cat in the hat," and he just smiles. And I don't know why that made me laugh so hard.
He got that Dr. Seuss hat.
It's really funny.
It's really it's such a dumb joke, but it made me laugh really hard.
Because you wouldn't think he'd smile.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the best thing about Gus. Like he's like a really surprising character. Like he's this gruff, hard guy, but like he's got a lot of heart. Like he loves Wally, and he legitimately loves everybody in the apartment too.
There's that bit where Andy's trying to get a job interview, and it's like that part's really great. Yeah. That's why I realized I really like Gus.
He's got heart.
But yeah, he's got heart. You gotta hire him.
You'd be an idiot not to hire him.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's such a cool.
But then you turn around and like in the very first episode, there's the one gag where it's the first time Kevin's sleeping in his room, and you can hear them arguing in the next apartment over.
Condoms. What's wrong with our regular brand of condoms?
Nothing, but these were on special, that's all.
You cheap gay bastard. These things are gonna fly right off.
Kevin's just covering his head with a pillow. Yeah,
so let's talk about. Gary, what's your favorite
shit!
character?
Yeah, I didn't want to answer this. I'm gonna be an asshole. It really comes down to Andy and Jim, but like. The older I get, the more I appreciate Andy as a character because, and we talked about this a little bit, Ahmad, it's very, very close to home. For anybody who's even remotely involved in cartooning or entertainment or anything like that where your work is judged by a group of people, and not only that, but there's something about him that, like, in any other show, Andy would always get, like, his one-up on everybody, and... like he'd be like, the lovable slacker. In this, the world just hates Andy, and I think like
that's what Failmore we were talking about this. Failmore, what'd you say?
Yeah,
like if it was made now,
I was gonna ask Gary, like, you were talking about, okay, imagine if this was produced now as an animation. Can you imagine what would happen if this was written now?
I don't even want to think about it.
Well, I did, and. What you're saying is that, in a contemporary show, Andy would be, the kind of lovable slacker or jerk-ass slacker or whatever who somehow always comes out ahead. Kevin would be, he's adorkable, he's gonna...
He's
things
the
always
Sheldon.
turn out
He's the
right
Sheldon.
for Kevin. Yeah, he's gonna be the bazinga, and, he can do no wrong, even if he does. Jim would be spouting internet memes nonstop. Even though, like, doing that in small doses now would be totally in his character, but the key word there is small doses.
Well, Jim is a surprisingly complex character.
Yeah, but he, like, mentions stuff like that, like, weird,
the underwear.
It's like it's a computer culture stuff, or like
right.
when he's going on about Japan. You know, when he came back from Japan that one time.
It's a great fucking joke, by the way. He just walks in the fucking door and he's like, "I'm back from Japan," and then the viewer's like, "What? Like, when did you go to Japan?"
It's like, we didn't know you left.
And then his music is still on.
It's like, yeah, he's like, you didn't know I left, and it's like, yeah, oh, it pans over to the door. Posey would be this manic pixie Tumblr girl.
Yeah.
And all the characters would suck. And the thing is, these are very much Gen X archetypes, if that makes any sense.
No, it totally does.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, their characters are kind of informed by, writers from that generation. But they're all at once send-ups of those and kind of deconstructions of them. And if there was a show like this being made now, I feel like it would either play it totally straight and just play entirely to those archetypes, or it would be 100% deconstruction and just be very mean-spirited and vicious.
Yeah, it'd be like fucking Girls on HBO.
And the point that I made to Ahmad was that if you would get to the substance of the writing, if this was handled now, it would have all the surface elements but none of the actual irony.
Yeah.
And ironically, it would lose its irony in an attempt to be quote-unquote ironic.
Yeah.
So
I think my favorite thing about Andy is that he's a very talented person. Like, he's clearly a very talented cartoonist, but he's both at the same time. He's too nervous, and he's also too, like, he has too much of an ego. And I don't think I've ever seen a character like that could be so talented and have both those problems. And, like, there's the whole, one of the best jokes in the fucking series when he shows Kevin that cartoon, and he's just like, do you even get this? And it's like, this is so Kafka-esque. And Kevin's just like, oh, shouldn't he say, like,
Please, no meat touching, man.
I'm an asshole to say this. I did not get that joke till just now. I just thought Kevin was being an idiot. Like, I thought he was just like.
Well, he partially.
That's what threw me off. That's what threw me off. I was just like, and then I was like, oh. But it's I think that's really, really cool. It's very hard to do a character like that. That's both really self-absorbed but really nervous, and it seems like so easy to do because you feel like those things kind of go hand in hand. But the way Andy does it, it's not like overtly mentioned. It just kind of happens, and like he acts like a real person. And like, obviously there are stupid cartoony bits where he's like mooning people or like spouting one-liners, but like those moments where he's like really into his cartoons, or he's talking about his career path, or he's talking about making money, like those are real moments. And I feel like a lot of cartoons don't have those, and it's really just he's just a great main character. Maybe it's because I relate to it a little too much, and that unemployment episode, the second part, where he's got that job interview and he's at home ironing his suit. His one suit, by the way. He doesn't have he just like one nice pair of clothes, which is that's a real thing, by the way. Like, yeah. Like, most people have like only one pair of those clothes. But he's ironing his suit and he's like,
my generation played a really mean trick on me. I thought we were all goofing off together, but everybody else snuck out to get rich while I was sleeping.
Oh, you mean during the 90s?
like, that resonated so much with me because we have all this media that does tell us like, oh yeah, be the goofy slacker and you'll be okay in life. And it's just like, yeah, absolutely, that is what media tells us. And I don't think it's Andy's fault necessarily. I think you look at his character, and he's a character that's entirely defined by media. He wants to be a cartoonist. In the animatic, there's that joke where he wakes up the next morning with that girl, and she's like, did you want to do anything today? And he's like, do you want to watch cartoons? And like, she's like, oh, you were serious. Like,
well, that's the idea of like, it's the idea of like we're essentially products of our time. And that's very clearly what Andy's supposed to like represent.
Yeah, and I feel like he's for that reason. I feel like, I mean, obviously he's the main character. He's going to be the most developed of all the characters. But like, it's just weird. It's very bizarre to see a character with that much kind of with that kind of depth. You could make the argument that a character like Homer Simpson has a lot more depth than what he's portrayed to have, especially in the sad episodes. With where his mom goes away, or where he takes back the job at the power plant for Maggie. But it's with Mission Hill, like it was never like there had to be a specific episode where Andy, like the unemployment episode was that kind of episode. But every other episode has little bits of Andy's character development going on, whether it's him growing with Kevin and learning to appreciate Kevin more, or even like in the first episode where like you see him talking to Gwen about like his cartoons, and he's like, oh, this is going to be an animated series, and this is going to be this, and this is going to be that. And it's just like, this character, you set up a character with goals, and that's like, it is very uncommon for an animated series to have a character with goals. Usually you have a character that fits an archetype, and they stay in that archetype. It's interesting. It's a, I'm trying to think of the word. It's just like, it's not reactive. It's not like Andy isn't reactive to the environment. Like he pushes through the environment and whatever's thrown at him. I guess. Well,
that's the idea of what we were comparing to Rocco. That's the idea of situational comedy, where it's like, in Rocco as a character doesn't change very much, but he doesn't have to, because it's about his reaction to situations rather than the situation changing.
Andy's a proactive character. Like, he has those moments where he's in slumps, like he's like sleeping on the fucking roof, like eating bugles, but like, which is, oh my god, those shots of him like just in his underwear on the couch. I'm like, oh god, I've been there. I've fucking been there though. Like where you're unemployed and you just want to sleep all day. That great line where he's just like, I don't need to take this. I can go back to sleep. Like, yeah, absolutely. That's something every artist feels at one point or another, where it's just like, I don't need the real world bothering me right now. But like comparatively, and I'll bring this up just because like it's a hot show right now, but like BoJack feels like a show where that character just has stuff happen to him and he reacts in a certain way. Andy like has something.
I like BoJack. I think it's fine. Good. It's a fine show. But the thing about season 2 and 3, not 1. But the thing about BoJack is that you are right. BoJack has a very set it's almost like a meter, like musical. It's very like a set pattern of the way he acts, and to some extent that's intentional. But it's by design, you're going to get tired of it, and that's why that's why you start to feel less and less sympathetic for him, because you're kind of just getting sick of it, and that's why it doesn't work.
And I guess that's what the show is supposed to be doing, like in a way, and I can't take that away from it. The show's not bad. It's not my personal cup of tea, but like, it's but I just like characters like Andy because he goes through so many changes.
He feels more real.
Like throughout that first season. Yeah, and it's just like he starts off, he hates his brother, doesn't want his brother there. But then by like episode like 8, like he kind of already sounds like a father figure to Kevin. Like he's talking about, it's like, oh, you're going on a date with Weirdy. I'm really proud of you. And it's not in like a...
That starts to take shape well before that, too. That doesn't come out of nowhere. That's like, from episode 1 on, you can see that change beginning to happen. And that's really the prevailing arc, especially if you look at the what the premise was for the unreleased episodes. You can tell where it's going. That whole process of these two brothers learning to get along and growing up together from their own respective points of immaturity, which is another thing I was going to say, is like, the show's very good at making sure that we're not supposed to be rooting for them 100% of the time. They're a very even mix of sympathetic and unsympathetic. They have major flaws as people. And that goes back to what you were saying about them feeling like actual people. The way that they're written. And what I was talking about earlier is, if this was being written now, I feel like they would be either all flaw or no flaw.
That's the idea. That's why, like, his relationship with Kevin is so interesting to me. Because they're both very self-righteous characters in different ways. Like, Andy's about, like, not selling out, usually. And Kevin's about, like, doing the right thing. But it's like, the way Kevin is handled, too, is, like, they could have very easily just been, like, the do-gooder nerd who doesn't ever get in trouble. But he's not a very good person either, and that's why he and Andy clash so much.
Kevin can be an asshole.
Oh man, Kevin! There were some moments where I was just like, I forgot how annoying.
Yeah, that's intentional.
But it's like, those first couple episodes, you're just like, oh god, we're gonna be spending, like, the entire show with this character. But then you see that he is flawed, and it doesn't come across so much in the first episode, because, like, you can't really blame him.
Yeah, that was... Also, getting drunk was Andy's fault, so...
But in the second episode, where he's just, like... He's fucking preaching to Andy. He's like, you can't like porn? And it's like... And then he's a fucking hypocrite. But, like... It's really weird because he is a lot like he's the exact polar opposite of his brother. He makes the same dumb choices as his brother, but they're in reverse. Like it's so weird,
exactly.
But they clash so they clash so well. And the birthday episode especially.
That birthday episode is probably like my favorite episode about the two of them.
That's
like,
I think that episode benefits a lot from that last like 5 or so minutes before the party they have at the house, where they're just in the empty house, and it goes from like a really somber, sad scene to like, you know, about like moving away and kind of getting used to new areas, to a like scene of them reliving their childhood almost and doing everything they couldn't do when they were kids. And it tells you so much about those characters within those like 5 minutes, or I think it's even less. I think it's like 3 minutes, but like it's amazing because you learn everything. If I just sat you down and just watched that one scene, you'd learn everything you need to know about the show. And it's just really well done. I think those characters are really well done, and it's
the episode in particular. Is like, I like the way it's structured because it's like you see Andy, he's upset, and then you see Kevin, he's upset about not getting a real birthday. And then you're kind of meant to think he's sort of a dick because he's just.
And then you see the flashback, and you're like, "Oh man, he's really a dick." And it's like,
you're seeing it from Andy. It's essentially an episode from Andy's perspective, where it's like, Andy's like, "What the fuck is his problem?" He's like, "Fine, I'll throw him a really great party," and then he tries his best, but Kevin still doesn't like it. And then it's like, oh, Kevin's just a dick then, and then you actually see what the real reason is. It's like, you realize it just as Andy.
There's nothing Andy.
If any other show would fuck it up, but
like you see, it's like anything Andy would have done would have been wrong because it's not that Andy's like not trying hard. It's that nothing could please Kevin because nothing's his house, like nothing's his home, and it's sad. It's really sad. I get if there's any characters I get a little annoyed by, it was kind of the parents because they don't know any better. They treated Kevin like a baby his entire life, which is. I mean, like, Andy compliments Kevin so well because he's that wake-up call to Kevin. Like, yeah, the world kind of sucks, dude, and, like, I'm proof. I love that scene where, like, he's gonna, like, just, like, chew his brother out, and, Posey, like, he has, like, a heart-to-heart, and then Posey comes in with a sign.
Well, welcome to the real world, sucker.
Posey, we had a little change of plans.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think there's YouTube videos of that I've used a lot on people's birthdays. Yeah, and it's now that I think about it, the parents super TV word find.
How was it fun?
Oh my god.
Whoa,
well,
whoa, it's even got Super Samba. Can we talk before we get off characters? Can we talk about how good of a character Jim is?
Jim's pretty great. And the other thing I was going to say, well, gosh, I almost forgot what I was going to say.
Was it about Kevin or about Jim?
More about the characters, just like being in the process of growing up, and how Andy and Kevin, they're the same set of attitudes applied to different sets of beliefs. And that's why they're, these great foils for each other. Because they really are extremely similar.
That's why they have such great interplay.
Yeah, it doesn't look that way at first, but they really are almost just alike as people.
They both want success, they just have different ideas of how to obtain it and what that actually means.
Yeah. And also, they're the ways in which they're selfish. And they can both be very selfish characters. And you bring up a very good point with Kevin's frequently a hypocrite and stuff like that, and Andy's frequently a bad role model. How the parents raised them. I think that they were supposed to be annoying.
Yeah, they're supposed to be shitty parents.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe not shitty.
They're supposed to be typical '90s parents who pamper their kids, and I'm gonna actually take back what I said, and they're a pretty picture perfect, image of what a '90s parent would be like.
Good. We sent it so you could throw Kevin a party like the ones we used to have back in Briarhurst.
Oh, no. I am not going to march around like an idiot firing chocolate-frosted birthday presents at Kevin's pampered ass.
Language? Your brother, your loving brother, craves consistency. It's his first birthday away from home. And now that he's living with you in some big, strange city, it's more important than ever that he be pampered. Now you go out and you buy him a cake.
Yeah, with chocolate frosting. He's happier with chocolate frosting.
You invite his little friends, and you make sure today is the best birthday Kevin has ever had.
They're overbearing and overprotective.
That's another interesting thing to bring up, because like Andy and Kevin, there's a pretty big age difference between them. They're 7 years apart, and the way they raise Kevin in contrast to Andy is interesting, because Andy feels like the black sheep of the family, but I think it was just a time period he was raised in. Like parents weren't supposed to be all like cuddly with their kids and support, super supporting your kids, and then you have like the early George Bush years, like the 90s, everybody's super special, every kid's gonna be something amazing kind of thing. And it's just
a lot of that feel-good crap started to seep in. Suddenly it was like, everybody, it's the gold star generation.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's got to be special.
The participation trophy generation. And it's, I mean, like, I don't... You can look at both characters and be like, well, the benefits of Andy being raised like this is he's more realistic, but, he has a lot more doubt than Kevin does, and Kevin's, just can be really egotistical, and, like, it's a very interesting character study when you think about it, and they never really go that in depth where it's like, well, it was because they were raised in different time periods. It's just...
But I think that's I think it's better they did that, though. I think you can kind of imply that. You can kind of gauge that.
Yeah. I wouldn't have actually liked it as much if they did go in depth with that, because figuring that out is part of the fun,
We should probably close out this character thing by talking about Jim and Posey. I forgot we didn't really talk about Posey that much, but Posey has some of the funniest fucking things in the show. And I forgot how many funny lines and like little gags she has. But Jim is so interesting because he starts off as one character.
Hello?
And then he becomes a completely different character.
So, what is your occupation?
I do some stuff uptown.
While remaining exactly the same. You think you see him, and he's like, this guy probably just sits in his room all day, and he gets, like, some kind of, like... You think he's, like, a Kramer, you know what I mean? He has some, like, vast fortune of money that, like, he got an inheritance or something, and he's just been sitting in his room. And then you find out, like, he's a fucking CEO at this company that has stock options, and, like, he's really intelligent.
But that's that same thing where it's like you're seeing this from Andy's perspective, you're learning as he does. So it's just it's kind of the surprise to everybody because it's a surprise to him. Well, surprise to everybody. Well, that's the thing. It's a surprise to everybody but him. I'm sorry, other way around. Surprise to him, but everybody else is kind of new.
He's like, just his face makes me laugh. I don't know what I think. I have a friend who looks.
He looks really silly. He's very pixie-ish.
Yeah, I have a friend who looks just like Jim with long hair. And maybe that's why I laugh when I see Jim, but, like, moreover, Brian Posehn's delivery has a lot to do with it. Anybody else cast in that role would have been really bad. I feel like they nailed it perfectly.
Yeah.
I would actually like to... I would like to see who tried out for that role first, because I can't imagine it is anybody but Brian Posehn.
I feel like they had him in mind for him.
Yeah, I mean, he was an up-and-comer at the time. He was on Mad About You, I think. So, like, he was, like, kind of like a sitcom star at the time. But he's just, like, I don't know. He's so, entertaining every time he's on screen. I love that one gag when they have the nightclub, and Andy, like... Jim's like, oh, should we just tell everybody the truth? And then he's like, what are you, high? And it just cuts to Jim's face smiling. And it just cuts back to Andy, and he like talks about the rest of the plan. It's so simple, but it's like it's perfect. Like you just that character, it works. Like it felt like everything was building up to that moment with Jim. I love. I usually don't like stoner jokes, but every stoner joke with him is really funny. Like, because it's just really well planned out. The episode with the baby and the snake, when Jim's on the roof eating brownies, and he's just like, whoa, it's like, can you believe someone just dropped these brownies? And then the snake rolls by with the fucking baby monitor in it, and he's like, can you believe somebody just left these brownies?
He looks at that, he looks there, and then he looks at the brownies, and that's like, it kind of hits you.
Yeah.
Just before he says it.
It's great, but like, he's not a stupid character. Like, he's clearly very intelligent. He wouldn't get anywhere. Although he does kind of say he's playing everybody in the office. Like, he's just like, oh, they come to me because I'm the young guy. But at the same time, Jim, in that same scene, Jim, like, goes over all these, like, computer statistics he knows. And it's just like, not statistics, like, all these computer things he knows. And he's just really knowledgeable. And he has that great line in the next scene where Andy's like, I'm not very corporate, and he's like, hey man, let me show you this, and he takes out $100 bill. He's like, that's a beer ticket, like you can buy a lot of beer with this. And it's not, and like going back to that line, it's not about the beer, it's literally just about being able to support yourself. And from a character like Jim, it seems silly, but you know, Jim's oddly the most sensible one in the house. Like, he's the most responsible one, and he's the most level-headed. Like, Posey, which we'll get into, like, she's fun, and she's, like, energetic, and she's nice, but, like, she's on another fucking planet. Like, you know, it's... Jim is kind of, like, Jim's just the balance in the house, which I like.
Like, you only see Jim get mad, like, literally once in the entire show.
The Real World episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great.
And then he puts the chicken bucket on his head because he doesn't want to be recorded.
I don't want to sell M&Ms.
Could you say, I don't want my life used to sell Reese's Pieces? Even better, say, I do want my life used to sell Reese's Pieces.
Can you say I don't want to sell Reese's Pieces? Better, could you say you do want to sell Reese's Pieces?
And he's just like flipping off the camera.
I love that he says, fuck you, you fucking asshole. That's great.
Yeah.
This is like all getting bleeped out. It's great.
Time for favorite episodes. Fillmore, you got one?
My favorite episode of this show. My favorite episode of the show. The Real World episode is magical. I forget what that one's called. I feel stupid for that. Andy versus the Real World. Stories of Hope and Forgiveness. That one's great. And,
that's my favorite.
The birthday one is excellent.
I think, isn't it just Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin has a birthday, I believe. And also the one where, Kevin and Eunice try to go out or something. It's not exactly them trying to go out, but it's Kevin finds love. There's a lot of a few Kevin episodes in there, which is kind of surprising.
Are you saying the whole series is your favorite episode?
They're all very close is the thing. They're really good, but like the standouts are all very close to each other.
I feel like Ahmad, that like it's funny that you said Stories of Hope and Forgiveness. That's it. Stories of Hope and Forgiveness, right?
Yeah, that's what episode
10, I think.
10.
It's funny that you said that's your favorite because that's the one that most reminded me of The Simpsons. It reminded me of The Simpsons, specifically the 107 short films about Springfield.
I think that's why I kind of like it.
I mean, that's not a bad thing. I mean, the guys came from The Simpsons, so that's not like unexpected. But that has the most universe like to it. I feel like that's the most, not canon, but like the most universe building, because you get to see everything. You get to see everything in that episode. You get to see this, the apartment, the store. The only thing I don't think you see in that is the school, which oddly always felt disconnected from the rest of the show to me. but it had.
You do see the school though.
Yeah, it's.
You do, yeah. Also, you do see the story.
Yeah.
That is happening.
But the whole you get to see all of Mission Hill in that episode, which is great. I think.
Yeah, that's why
I think that works really to its advantage. If you want to talk about that one, I got some, but if you want to talk about that one really quick.
Let me talk about that one. Let me talk about that. But first, let's bite into the crispy crunch of a Kit Kat bar.
Panzer.
Actually, let me ask you before we go on to that. Let me ask you guys something. Is that a thing? Was that a thing in schools?
Yes.
I never
That's
saw that.
that's a parody of
Really?
Channel 4 or Channel 1.
Yeah.
It's one of those. Yeah.
I guess they phased that out. That's when I was going to high school.
Yeah, it wasn't sponsored by fucking Nestle Crunch, but
That's why I think. That's why I was like, what is that thing?
But they did have like Clearasil ads and stuff in that. They really did.
Oh, all right.
Panzer, man, Panzer's the best character in the show.
That's another thing. There also remind me before we go on. This show is great because Tom Kenny and Tress MacNeille play every other incidental character.
Yeah, let's go into that for a second. Let's go into
Yeah, do you know if there's an actual reason for that, or just how it turned out?
No, I don't know. I think you have a lot of shows like that. I mean, The Simpsons.
Yeah,
Every character is one voice actor, basically.
But that's because it's distinctly like five people, and they're all playing different background characters. This is literally 2 people.
Yeah, I think
playing like 50 other background
I think
characters.
we can all agree the best Tom Kenny role outside of Wally is the fucking Ewok. It's
because it's just SpongeBob's
Literally SpongeBob.
They mentioned that in the commentary. And they're talking about how they're like, this came out like we did this while SpongeBob was being made. So, nobody knew there was going to be this big hit, and then everybody mentions, like, that sounds a lot like SpongeBob. Yeah, but Tom Kenny is all over the show, and he creates a lot of the environment, which is great. He's the fucking penis guy.
He's the penis guy, he's Wally, he's like every TV guy, he's the Panzer guy.
Oh, he is Panzer, fuck. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I meant
I going back to characters for a second, like, Wally... Specifically in that episode, oh god, that episode's amazing too. Now I don't know which one's my favorite, but specifically in the Man from Pluto episode, it's some of Tom Kenny's best voice acting.
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah, it's that whole scene where he's talking about how he met Gus, specifically at the end when the guy's like, "Oh, you're through." And then he's like, well, we took what we had from the drive-in rights, and then, we got a diner, and here we are now. It's so real! It's so fucking real! It's crazy!
That's because you don't get to see Tom Kenny, do roles like that. It's usually just, goofy cartoon roles.
You don't, and I feel like Tom Kenny would do great with roles like this. And
Tom Kenny's a good actor. He's got chops.
He started out as a sketch comedian.
Yeah, exactly.
I forgot what show he was on, but it was like a sketch show.
Fun fact, he was almost on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, that would have been really
Imagine
cool.
that universe where he was on that show.
Fun fact, I met Tom Kenny once, and I said, I have your first movie appearance. And he goes, how I got to college? I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's how I got my SAG card.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he is really fucking cool.
Alright, I'm glad we get that out of the way. Alright, so favorite episode, I forgot. Stories of hope and forgiveness. I like the episode a lot because, like you said, you're pretty much get to see all Mission Hill and most of the characters too at the same time because they're all dealing with this very ill-defined crisis. I know it's supposed to be kind of a reference to a lot of the Gulf War, like the Oklahoma bomb. It's supposed to be like every crisis that happened in the 90s.
Waco or whatever, Ruby Ridge.
And then for some reason, Wally Gator is on TV.
Yeah.
Dennis Rodman.
There's that famous shot. When people think of Mission Hill, they think of that one shot. It's like World in Crisis, and it's Andy really happy.
Baby! This is gonna be the best day of my life.
Yeah.
But,
it's our generation.
essentially. But yeah, it's, but you see all these different characters kind of just going through all these different little side stories, and yeah, it's sort of similar to, 22 short films about Springfield. It's not as direct as that. It's still mostly about Andy. I like the kind of interplay that's going on. You got what Posey's doing. You have the running gag with Toby being chased by the rabid dog. Very slowly.
Andy, help! This dog has rabies and he won't stop following me.
Stay over there then!
Okay. What else do I do?
Just keep walking. Yeah, that's good. And don't stop or start running. That'll make him crazier. Okay? Just keep on walking.
Andy, should I just keep circling the block until you come back? Andy?
And then you have Kevin.
He's just
kinda
walking.
He's just kind of walking, and he's just like, I don't know what to do. Andy, please wait there.
I fucking love Toby.
Toby's funny.
Toby is. I think he's Josh Weinstein.
Yeah, I think it's just him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, let me check.
He reminds me of my. I had a friend who looked just like Toby in high school. His name is Thomas Lumpkin. His name is.
Oh, George is Bill Oakley. I like that.
Yeah, it's great. Beep boop. Yeah, I had a friend named Thomas in high school who looked just like Toby, and he acted just like Toby, and it was really weird watching that show and being friends with him.
Were you Kevin?
Was I Kevin?
Or were you George?
Were you George?
I was probably closer to Kevin, but I would like to, George is the
You run around, you're like, bing blong, bling blong.
Bling blong, bling blong.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's like, you're seeing all this stuff happening, and it's very... a lot of my favorite jokes are in that episode, where it's like oh my god, the loudest I've ever laughed at in that entire show was when Posey's about to reach like enlightenment, and she's like, but she's being interrupted by Andy dragging the gate, so she's about to leave their little fantasy world, but she's like, quick, pull the tarp, and she pulls the tarp, and it's fucking Ronald McDonald for like a split second, and it's like, what happens? And it just cuts back to the real
She woke up and yeah.
that
whole episode is just fantastic.
It's really well put together. It shows how ambitious that show can be.
Yeah.
I thought
that's the first season too. They're tackling something like that.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's I hate to say this, but it's a better first season than The Simpsons.
Yeah. Easy. That's not.
I know. Like
That's
it's crazy to say that, and I feel like
how much is that really saying?
Yeah, because like look how rough the first season of The Simpsons is.
Yeah, I feel like fucking Weinstein and Oakley are going to listen to this. They're either going to be like, "Oh, that's fucking awesome," or they're going to be like, "What the fuck? You're shit talking my show." They weren't even working.
We fucking hate those guys.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's I even like okay. The best thing about that episode to me is that like the relationship between Andy and Becca in that episode, it doesn't come off as forced at all, in my opinion. And like the ending is really sweet.
Yeah.
Like she like clearly cares about him a little bit. And that would have been interesting for her to come back in a later season or something, and then he's dating Gwen. Like I would have been interested to see where that goes. Because they had some kind of chemistry. She wasn't. Yeah. Go ahead.
What do they call her? Is it Becca Michelle Butterfield?
Becca Michelle Butterfield.
They make a joke out of it in the beginning. We're supposed to be like, it's a. When all the actors, all these actors and actresses with like 3 names.
Yeah, like 2 first names.
Yeah.
It's just like they're all fake, and there's like some of
them are real.
Jonathan Taylor
Yeah,
Thomas.
so Jonathan Taylor Thomas and
yeah, a lot of those are real.
Yeah, Sarah Michelle Gellar and yeah, they're all real. So
there's a mixture of like fake and real.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it funny.
Yeah. I like when Jim's talking about like the movies she's in, and they're all fucking like I Know What You Did Last Summer sequels. I'm still aggravated by what you did last summer.
Yeah, it's like I'm still kind of upset about what you did last summer. Or something like that. It's something very close to that.
I'm very aware like of what you did last summer or something like that. They're really stupid sounding, but like yeah, and it's frustrating because like Andy I can't even think of like the whole Andy plot of that episode is insane. But
yeah, he's going.
It's like you feel bad for him because people are only interested in the crisis because it's on TV and like it's being like
there's always celebrities involved.
It's always celebrities involved. They wouldn't be paying attention otherwise. They wouldn't give a shit. But because it's being broadcast on TV, they're all like fucking zombies. And it's the one episode where like Andy is right. Like Andy is right about everything, and he doesn't give a like. He's like, these things are just created to get people to pay attention to things and like or get people watch TV and like leave work early. And I mean, like, part of it's wrong because it's Andy being ignorant, but at the same time, it's like the fucking thing sounds so stupid. Like it's like they're talking about Dennis Rodman like being a diplomat,
addressing the nation.
Can we talk about how oddly prophetic that is? The Dennis Rodman becoming a diplomat thing? That's so fucking weird.
It's so weird.
Oh.
They could all see which way the winds were blowing back then, and guess what?
Yeah.
They were right.
The watershed moment of Dennis Rodman.
I just think, tensions are really high right now, and then he just gets cut off.
Just cut off. It's funny.
David Schwimmer. Fucking Steven Spielberg thinks a 17-year-old David Schwimmer.
Because they call Becca's... Because he sounds like David Schwimmer, they call back to it. Yeah, about the whole moment at the end where she's talking about... Where Kevin tells her about the fruit cup analogy, and she tells the whole world that. And it's... I mean, you could say it's corny, sure, but I like how it ties it all in.
Yeah. I like how it pisses Andy off, too.
The final blow that completely crushes his ego. And then he just drags the gate home, defeated in the rain.
Not before he, kills the dog.
Yeah, he just smashes his skull in.
He, smacks the dog with the gate.
Yeah. He just
until he runs away. He's like, oh, thank you!
He's laying in the bathtub with the gate.
Yeah, he doesn't get it off and the episode's over.
Oh, okay. Can I just say how shitty it was of Kevin to run away with the tuxedo instead of going to a corner store to get more matches?
Yeah.
What the fuck was that all about?
I don't know.
That's the only part of that episode that does not hold up for me. It's wait, what? Where's he going?
I don't know. I guess he was just caught in the moment. That's the only way I can kind of justify it.
Yeah, I can't. That's the only Kevin moment where I'm why? What?
Why'd you do that? But I guess that's kind of the intention. It's just keep fucking over Andy.
Yeah. As for my favorite episode, I've talked about Unemployment Part 2 a lot. Specifically, it's just that episode that just, watching it now, it was really hard to sit through because,
It's too real.
Well, I'm just in that area right now where it's just the fuck am I doing? So, it's a hard pill to swallow, and that scene where he's in the elevator and all the people are oh, you better get ready at 24, if you don't do something at 24 you're screwed for life, and all this stuff is happening, and it's just
by the way, sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
The episode plays a Moby song. I had to stop for a moment when I started hearing the song, and I was like, oh my god, remember fucking Moby?
He also plays in the birthday episode.
Yeah, there's 2 Moby songs. I was like, what the hell is going on? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and everything about that episode, him... Okay, so that episode gave me a legitimate fear about, not having dental insurance and something happening to my tooth. That's fucked... Oh, it scared me so much. I'm just oh, shit. Can happen, can it? His tooth just falls out. After
falls out.
He gives him the curd of milk.
Oh, God. That's old wives' tale. But, yeah, that's a great episode. I'm tempted to say that one's my favorite, but the Weirdy episode is really, really well done.
I would say, if it wasn't for the birthday one, I would say that's probably the best Kevin episode. I'll say that. Fuck it, I'll say that. I think it's really
Weirdy. The Kevin was it Kevin Finds Love is the name of the episode?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think so.
That episode is boosted times 10 because of how good Jennifer Jason Leigh is as Weirdy. It once again spot on voice casting by this crew, and it's kind of crazy, but she's really good. Her voice sounds so alien to the rest of the show. Because she's supposed to be this weird outcast, and she has all these little cool little names for people Chimpy and Water Balloon. That's really okay. That was heartbreaking at the end because they said she had feelings for him without saying she had feelings for him. When she gets on the boat, she's like, "See you around, Chimpy." She clearly had something for him, and it sucks that their situation was shitty. But yeah, I like that they do a 180 on that character where she's just this weird introvert, and then she turns out to be this super sly, cool girl that just happens to look like a dork. And they didn't have to they didn't have to change her look. She didn't take off her glasses and let her hair down. And she was just herself. And if Kevin had not been a fucking dick and had gotten to know her a little better, it might have worked out for them. But okay, so there was that moment at the end where she's on the boat and she says goodbye, see you later on Chimpy. And there's the part in the beginning where Kevin's like, oh, we should go on a date. And it's like, we have a lot in common. And she's like, are you saying I'm attractive? And it's just like, that's sincere. Everything else she says is a little weird, but like, that's like a really sincere moment. And it has a lot to do with how it's voice acted. And
delivery.
There's little subtle differences in the way, it's like a little subtle difference. And, it's just kind of, it's sad. It's really sad, that episode to me. And it's much sadder, like, on the second viewing. And they ended on a really dumb joke. But it's, they fucking play the Benny Hill theme at the end.
Yeah.
They swimming through the water.
He's chasing after the ladder in the water.
Oh, what am I thinking? So it's a three-way tie, it's that one, and then, I mean, like, Man from Pluto really should have won an Emmy. Like, there's absolutely no reason why that should have won an Emmy. I mean, I think it was because it was on hiatus for so long, and, like, everybody forgot about it, but, like, what else was out that year? Nothing else was, like, pushing like, that kind of edge in animation at that point. You could kind of point to The Simpsons with the episode about, the John Waters character, but, that has some of the best Simpsons moments of all time, but it's... The Gus and Wally episode was way better, and I think it works better because it looks at a relationship like it's not because they're gay. Like, it's never like Gus isn't ostracized from Hollywood because he's gay. It's because he loves this guy so much that he puts him in the movie, and like his love blinds him to like it blinds him to his like career being in danger.
There's one funny joke where he's talking to the actor guy. He's like, "What do I have to do? What did he have to do to get this part?" And he tells him, he's like, "Oh, never mind.
Oh shit, I'm out of here." I love that they explain X-rated movies. That was really interesting too, where it's just like X-rated movies don't have to be pornography, and they're talking about.
And they call back to it in a joke where Kevin's like, "We watched X-rated movies together," and
everyone's like, "Oh god." So one of the best jokes in the episode is like Kevin's like, so. Kevin's talking to Wally. He's like, "Oh, so you're not mad at me anymore?" It's like, "No, we're as close as an elderly gay man and a young straight teen can be."
I love that.
God damn it, this episode.
I just like that Wally is such a real character. It's funny. You already said this, but he really is just it's real, sincere character. It's like you can like this person.
Yeah, they were real characters. The whole knife in the head episode, it's a really weird subplot when you think about it.
It's not related to anything.
It defines their relationship so well, though. It's like one has to bring the other down to reality. That constantly switches throughout the season. Like one of them isn't always the anchor. Like they change that position so many times. Like Wally is the anchor in that episode, but in the episode where. The unemployed episode where Andy needs the reference, Gus is like, no, let him get it on his own. Then Gus steps in, but at the same time, Gus wasn't off base by saying, Andy should just go in with what he has. But it's interesting to see those characters evolve over the course of the season. And it really pisses me off that we don't get to see any of these characters ever again.
No. I guess it's something we can get into.
Can we talk about the animatics too?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, what were we gonna ask Failmore first?
Actually, no. Let's talk about animatics first because I'm about to get a completely different thing.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. So for those who don't know,
Failmore, did you see the animatic?
I didn't see all of that actually.
Okay.
That's fine. Go ahead, man.
All right, so for those who don't know, Mission Hill was canceled after 13. Well, Ahmad said it, but it was canceled after 13 episodes. There was 18. It was 16. 16.
18.
18 episodes planned, and one of them made it to a full-length animatic that was voiced. I think the only person who wasn't there was the girl who plays Posey, so she had a sub filling in.
It's really apparent.
Yeah. That Vicky, I forgot what her name is, Vicky something. But everyone's there. And there are two things. First of all, the animatic itself that might be, if we're counting everything, that might be my favorite episode. It's a really well done animated sitcom love story. That's not done in a it's not done in a really generic way. Every trope it throws at you, it just blows up in its own face. Yeah. I really like that. The episode is about Andy and Gwen are having differences on wanting to get serious. And after an argument, Andy accidentally sleeps with Jim's secretary.
Who's in love with him.
Who's in love with Jim, which is also one of the best jokes in the episode.
Yeah.
Grand
romantic gesture.
So Andy, after getting drunk, Andy and her sleep together, and Andy gets pink eye from her. And this becomes a problem throughout the rest of the episode, and it leads to a lot of hurt feelings. But the episode itself, it might just be because we're watching a full length script, and the meat isn't quite cut out yet. But the detail it goes into, you get a little bit of every character in that episode, and it's great.
Yeah.
I love the what was I going to say? I love, there's a scene where the neighbors, I'm forgetting their names, Nicole, I think, and it's Nicole and
Carlos?
There's a part in that animatic where they're using a keg, and then Gus comes over and shows them how to use a keg, and it's such a not a stupid moment, it's such like a small little moment, but it tells you so much about that character. I fucking love Gus. I keep going back to him.
I told you Gus and Wally's my favorite. That's a very good reason.
It's such a nice little moment. I feel like that would have been cut out of the final product, but as it is, it doesn't need to be there, but it builds the universe a little more. I also like that episode because the relationship between Andy and Gwen is real.
It's very complicated, which is how it should be.
It's very, very, very complicated. I love that first interaction with them in that episode where Andy is like, "Can we sleep together?" And Gwen's like, "No," and then she just goes, "Bitch," and she goes, "Bastard," and they just start kissing. Like, it's great. I feel like you would never get away with that in a show. You would never get away with that in a show today, ever. I feel like you'd get fucking like harassed if you put that out there. But
just get pilloried by people that pretend they care.
Yeah, absolutely. And the episodes, the plots in Mission Hill can range from like generic sitcom setups to just like what the fuck setups. Like the entire episode about Posey giving back massages that ends with a pimp wanting money.
Yeah,
and
then falling off a building.
If you pitched that to me, I'd be like, no. Like, that's so stupid. But the way they do it works out really well. I love Andy's reaction to the pimp, where he's like, "You're a good old fashioned pimp." Like, he's excited that a pimp is at his door.
Yeah, a platform shoe, bell bottom wearing pimp.
Pimpy McPimpenheimer. I love the ending.
His back gives out. Like,
yeah.
"Please help me, bitch."
Bitch, help me! She massages him and she fixes his back and then she fucking kills him. She's
like, why'd you fix his back? She's like, "I didn't want to throw him off the building and then not have him feel it." He's like in a dumpster.
Yeah. But like I was saying, like, the plots in that show are almost inconsequential to the actual character development. I feel like you can put those characters in any situation and they would develop the same. And just as a writer, I like that it took a chance on being a character-driven show. A character-driven animated show. I think the only other show that, that's not true. There are a lot of them, but this one does it really well. This and home movies in particular.
Yeah. I would say I like home movies, but I think it does it like a thousand times better.
This does it, I mean, they really... Well, I think the thing you have to remember about home movies is that it's pretty much all improv.
It's definitely a different kind of show.
So, like,
it didn't get more scripted until, like, the last season.
Yeah, and this season, clear that they had character arcs, and the heartbreaking thing about the show, too, is that there were 10 seasons planned.
Oh,
Jesus
really?
Christ.
Yeah, there were 10 seasons planned, and it was going to end up with Kevin going to a college. I forgot what he's going. I don't think he's going to Yale. He's going to another college that's closer to Mission Hill. And
do they do the Carlton thing in Fresh Prince where he doesn't go to Princeton right away?
I never realized that fucking Kevin and Andy are a lot like Carlton and Will.
They are, yeah.
Well,
all roads lead to Fresh Prince.
Yeah, this show's a big old ripoff. No. But it was going to end with Andy basically running The Simpsons. Like, he had his own Simpsons.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's crazy to if it would have ended up there. And I think his show was going to be about Mission Hill. It was going to be like a meta thing where the show was about Mission Hill. So it is frustrating because, like, Kevin gives him really good advice in the beginning where it's just like, oh, you should make it a little more broad and, like, relatable. And it's just like, you have an entire show or comic right in front of you. But, you know, it is what it is. I can't get no meat touching out of my head now. Please, no meat touching.
God.
I guess hearing all that, it's like, would you want, like, Fillmore, where'd you think a season 2 would go?
Where did I think season 2 would go? Mm-hmm. Well, the first season was basically, like I said before, the arc of Andy and Kevin kind of getting used to the idea of living together in the city. You know, Kevin's getting used to being there, Andy's getting used to having him around. Probably after that point, it would be more about them finding out who they are.
Yeah.
Because you have Andy, he's getting the new job, and I feel like because of the way that he did get the job at Jim's ad agency, that was going to lead to him kind of being put on the spot. You know, he has to prove himself. He's going to kind of run headlong into these sort of slackerish ideals that he's had, and having to kind of confront himself. And then Kevin would have to grow up in some other way, you know, start moving in whatever direction he was bound to go in, which would probably be more toward becoming a more realistic person, not being so uptight. I feel like that would have been the main thrust of that, you know, continuing where they left off with these characters with that one major thing already resolved.
I think we would see in the second season, I think we'd have to see Andy's comic career start to blossom a little more. I think we'd start to see those first steps to him having, like, his cartoon and stuff like that. Kevin, I've always felt like he's a harder person to plan the plot trajectory for, because, like, he only has, like, one goal, and that's to get into Yale. Andy's a little all over the place. Andy has to you know, he has to have a relationship, he has to have a job, he has to have his passions, he has to deal with his roommates. Kevin has a lack of a lot of that, but I feel like maybe the second season would have him becoming a lot more responsible for things around the house. Even though, to be fair, Kevin is a really responsible for things around the house. He's, like, doing the checking and stuff like that. And, like, you know, he's paying all the bills. But I feel like you'd see. I think Kevin would have to. I feel like there'd be some kind of plot where, like, you know, maybe Jim or Posey has to move out, and Kevin had to get a job for them to keep the apartment or something.
Probably, yeah.
So I think that might happen. As for Posey and Jim, I couldn't even predict where Jim would end up in the second season. That's so fucking hard. That's like asking me to, like, untangle a giant ball of wires.
You know, I think what would have happened, I think at some point the company he worked at would have been, like, bankrupt because they couldn't adapt to the new millennium or whatever. And then he would end up somewhere else.
It would be the .com bust parody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe him and Andy go into business together.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that would be they'd, like, run some kind of company out of the apartment. That would actually be really cool.
All right. So I think let's start wrapping up. I think we're going up like 90 minutes now. All right, so let's do this.
Sweet.
Final thoughts. Gary, go.
I mean, it's a great fucking show. There's not much else to say. I mean, like,
no, he's right.
You have to. I think what you have to understand about the show being one season is that it was made, and they say it on the DVD themselves, it was made in the midst of every network on television, every network that had a primetime lineup wanting their own Simpsons. Yeah. And I think WB was like, okay, we've got it. This is definitely our Simpsons. It's not only is it our Simpsons, it's skewing more towards our demographic, you know, the Dawson's Creek demographic.
The young adult demographic. Yeah.
The young adult demographic. And I don't think they were ready for something that was based off of fucking indie comics that not a lot of people know about. That's not fair, because a lot of people do like Peter. A lot of people respect Peter Baig, and especially
people want to know. They know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was that's what it is. It was a misunderstood show, and it's heartbreaking. It really is, because one, Josh Weinstein and Bill Oakley are my two favorite Simpsons writers. They've written some of the best best episodes of The Simpsons. Summer 4'2" is up there in my like top 5. I believe they were the writers on that one.
Also, for more contemporary people, I think Bill Oakley works at Disney now.
I think it. I'm gonna check this.
No,
it's Josh.
Josh Weinstein. I know worked at. He wrote a lot of really good episodes of Gravity Falls.
Yeah, and yeah, it's crazy to think about that. That you went from Mission Hill to Gravity Falls, but you can, like, it's in his episodes. You can
it's kind of apparent, yeah.
Yeah, you can see it's a really good pairing too. Like that humor works really well in Gravity Falls. It's just watching this again. At first, I was just like, I feel like I've seen these. Maybe I don't need to watch it. But then I kept watching and watching and watching, and taking that journey with these characters was fun. It's a fun show. That those last couple episodes are Emmy material in my opinion. The Gus and Wally episode, the shit gets in your eye episode, the animatic. Yeah, and even Unemployment is I think is Emmy worthy. I wanted to mention that before we wrapped up. The best way Andy gets his fucking job in that episode, where it's they hire some guy and then Jim is really upset and the boss comes in. He's like, Jim, what's wrong? He's like, it's just the new guy, and they fire him on the spot.
Just get rid of him.
It would be okay. It would be funny there. And then he's still upset. He's like, what is it? He's like, Beardley. And then they just fire Beardley.
Just cuts him walking out the box.
And then Andy has his fucking job. It's great. And yeah, just wanted to end up like that. I wanted to bring that up because it's just like, I just don't see that type of humor anymore, and I'm getting really depressed talking about this. Like how like primetime animation doesn't aspire to be this sort of thing anymore. Bob's Burgers, I guess. Bob's Burgers is the closest thing we have, but like Bob's Burgers. As much as I enjoy watching Bob's Burgers, it's a great like filler show to have on, but like.
It's not engaging, I think.
It's not as engaging. The character development is very sparse. And like it's just kind of an show to have on in the background, like, and it's a lot of poop jokes, which I don't find funny. This has very
internet oriented humor, which I'm not a fan of.
This has a couple. Mission Hill does have a couple poop and dick and fart jokes in it, but like it's not.
But you can count them on your hand, though.
You can count them on your hand, and it's more about the characters. And I'm upset that we don't have shows that are more animated shows that are more about characters.
All right, Fillmore.
My final thoughts on the show. Well, first of all, completely agreeing with Gary. It's a great show. A lot of people, I was kind of surprised, actually, my roommate didn't remember much about it. And I feel like maybe when it was on the air, when a lot of people my age were still in high school, that it may have been kind of ignored. And if you don't remember all that much about Mission Hill, or you weren't around for Mission Hill when it was on Adult Swim, go back and watch it, because it is worthwhile seeing it again, especially as somebody who's now older than I was when I first saw it.
Feels timeless, too.
Yeah, there's a certain timelessness to it, just because of how everything came together. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to summarize my thoughts on it, just because there really is so much to say about this show, and we've really only scratched the surface in all the 90 minutes we've been talking. That's really about all I have to say about it. It's like, if you have not seen this, you owe it to yourself to watch it at least once. It's a really fantastic show. It's not what it appears to be on a lot of different levels. And one of the other things I did want to bring up after talking about how this would be if it were made today, and you had certain people working on it now that are in the industry now.
Mm-hmm.
This show, it comes off as something that is going to celebrate specifically hipsterdom super hard. And it winds up taking the piss out of it in so many subtle ways that I think that's really fantastic. Not just because it doesn't give in to that whole, we're going to make these characters basically self-inserts and blah blah blah, like I was talking about, but also just the way that the universe kind of pokes fun at these archetypes. And is both, sending a love letter to late 90s indie culture, but also, doing what do you call it? I'm forgetting the word now.
Well, describe it.
Well, the way that it's just kind of ribbing that. It's it's both a love letter and a parody at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas now, yeah, it's an affectionate parody of late 90s indie culture, whereas now you would have the more hipsterish, new indie kind of mentality approaching that. And
it wouldn't have the same sense of irony.
Yeah, it would have had no self-awareness, which would have killed it. It's a show that people... I feel like it's even more relevant now than it was back then, just because of that one factor. So Ahmad?
Let's wait, before we get to me, let's talk about where you can see this show. Nowhere, because the DVD sucks. Gary, get into it.
Yeah, okay, so the DVD for this show, if Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein hear this podcast, please, for the love of God, talk to Warner Brothers and get a remaster of the show on DVD. I think
the actual fucking music.
All right. So that's something we didn't really get into, and I'll go over it really quick. This show has some great use of licensed tracks, and it's not like, with the exception of that REM song, it's not like overtly there. Like in the episode with in the first episode in the pilot, that Looper song that plays in the beginning, Burning Flies, is like a perfect introduction to that world, and the Silkworm song in the car. And the Lion Rock song at the party, it's all really well integrated. It's not, and honestly, there's not that many songs to license.
No, there isn't. It's every night.
It's really not that many. And I hope there's a re-release of this series with the animatics on it. I think the animatics should totally be on it, and anything else they have that they can put on it, like more commentaries. Yeah. Episode 3 of this show, is that the one with Kevin's friend? What's his name? Not Toby. I'm losing George. With George's sister. That episode on the DVD, you can't hear anything.
Really?
You cannot hear anything. Like it's
the audio's fucked up.
The audio is fucked up because the dialogue tracks that's playing in that is the audio. The dialogue is the audio track from the commentary. So it's lowered. It's lowered, so you can't hear anything.
That's dumb.
How do you fuck that up?
I don't know. It's really bad. So guys, for the love of God, please put this out and get the music rights. With something like Daria, it's frustrating, but it's understandable why they can't, because there's 5 seasons of Daria. There's like 7 songs in each episode. With this, there's I think there's 15, maybe even 10 songs altogether. So and Warner Brothers, I mean, to be completely fair, this was a time before, this was made before a time before DVD licensing was a thing.
Yeah.
So there's a fan base for it. People want this show to continue, which I don't know if it's a good idea or not. I think I think the time has passed.
Yeah, I think I don't think Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein would approach this show the same way they did years ago.
Yeah, I think, and that's nothing against them. It's just, it is what it is, and it's a shame, but yeah, better DVD, please.
Please. So my final thoughts are
penis, 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 penis.